Welcome to Around the Empire. I'm your host, Joanne. Kelley Lane is co-hosting today. This is a fully independent podcast. Lend your support, patreon.com/aroundtheempire, rockfin.com/aroundtheempire, paypal.me/aroundtheempirepod. Also, please like, share, and subscribe. Craig Jardula, aka Pasta, joins us today, and we talk about the latest developments in the election integrity arena surrounding the 2020 election, especially the Arizona audit. There have been a lot of claims about audits in various states, but the term audit means a lot of different things in American elections, as in some audits are not really audits. However, the audit that's happening in Arizona is a real audit, which is important for a lot of reasons that we discuss in this episode. Around the Empire's main focus is not electoral politics or any politics in particular, but politics are at the center of all wars and foreign policy, and the presidential elections in the United States are at the center of most wars and foreign policy in today's world. Craig, aka Pasta Jardula, is a host on the Convo Couch show, an independent media show focused on politics, rooted in progressivism, and one that strives to stand up for the little guy against the machine. They've done extensive work with candidates and investigation of elections and election systems. Welcome. We have a special edition today. We have my co-host Kelley Lane and Craig Pasta Jardula from the Convo Couches here because we want to talk about the Arizona audit. And Pasta just got back from Arizona like late last night. I don't know how he's still awake, but anyway, welcome you guys. Thanks so much for doing this. This is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I slept in today, and you're the first people I'm talking to, Kelley and Joanne. Love to start it off this way. I got another show later on tonight, got a couple shows on Monday. I'm going to spread the news, and anybody who wants to have us on, me, Fiorella, or Johnny, to talk about this Arizona Maricopa audit, please reach out to the Convo Couch because we want to make sure we get this information out there. As you guys know, we're more leftist kind of leaning type of people. I consider myself the leftist libertarian. Fam considers her a revolutionist leftist, you know what I'm saying? And Johnny's somewhere in there as well. And even though a lot of people are kind of framing it as a right-wing audit, it is not. It's an audit for the people, by the people, and it's something, I know you ladies know this, we should be doing every single time for every elections. There's no reason why we shouldn't be double or triple checking our work. And if we let cynicism kill us, and it is going to kill us right now, we have nothing to stand on. This right here, and I know you ladies feel the same way, when it comes to elections, it's one of the most important issues because without it, we don't obtain any policy because we, the people, won't have our choices in there. Those who are running the things in this earth, this planet, they're the ones who will maintain power because they'll have the mechanism to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it's in all of our best interests. There's no room for me for partisanship in this. I ditched partisanship anyway, so that was easy. But let me just start out with some headlines because, like you, I think the more auditing, the more public involvement in the counting, the more transparency, the better, right? So what happened was, I've been watching these headlines. I've not been following the subject super closely, but I've seen some of the headlines and all that. And I'm seeing this kind of thing. Here's the Washington Post. No good can come of it. Then we have CNN. Now they're talking about the most absurd conspiracy theory yet in the ongoing Arizona recount. And we'll talk a little bit more about what they're referring to there. Arizona's dangerous vote audit includes a hunt for bamboo. That's the crazy conspiracy theory that's being stirred up. Then we have the Washington Post. The obvious goal is injecting more doubt into the 2020 results. Then Washington Post also calls it the Great Bamboo Hunt. Arizona's bizarre vote examination effort gets more bizarre. I got to remember, some people are only listening to this, not watching, so I better read these headlines. And then we have good old Rachel Maddow.
Mm-hmm.
Justice Department takes an interest in Arizona's bonkers election audit. And then we have good old Jake Tapper with Cindy McCain on CNN. Cindy McCain says that GOP's Arizona election audit is ludicrous. So this is just a little sampling for you guys. Just something to start off with. So is this dangerous and a great, crazy, bonkers, ludicrous bamboo hunt? What's the story here? You just talked to a lot of people and you've been doing lots of work, both of you, on the election integrity. And even though this is a war and foreign policy um, podcast with a varied audience, not just domestic, pretty much everybody is interested in the U.S. presidential election. So I definitely, weave some of that into these episodes. But tell us what you think, what you know.
Well, all those articles, those headlines you brought up are just typical. You can count on the establishment to play this game, to try to muddy the waters, to try to undermine this whole process. Yes, it was a state Senate Republican majority that triggered this audit. But it was a lot of people who were kind of calling in and emailing whatnot to their assemblymen, which the representatives and the senators, and saying, hey, man, something's not right here. Something doesn't add up in Denver. This smells like foul play. Can you push for more answers? Coupled with a lot of evidence. Like, I know a lot of people like to say, what evidence do you have? What evidence do you have? Because we don't have the smoking gun, because we don't, as we know, and I hope our audience has been educated to know that our elections are owned by corporations. Our tabulations are owned by corporations. We have black box voting. We have proprietary software, so we don't even understand and see the actual counting. And there's a lot of other areas where it seems like establishment Republicans or establishment Democrats, they either work together or they're trying to game the system separately to have an advantage over another person and stuff by leaving rules in place and leaving the framework of our elections in a very shitty position. So what does the establishment do, and especially the leftist Democratic establishment, mainstream media? They're trying to undermine and muddy the waters. They're taking a little bit of a QAnon theory, and kind of thrust it on everybody kind of in the election itself, the auditors in the elections, and saying this is how absurd they're doing. They're actually looking from bamboo from China. That's not the case. They're trying to authenticate all the ballots, whether they come from China or whether they come from Kinko's down the street. All of our ballots by federal law have to have 20% recycled paper in them. So if somebody did make fake ballots or whatnot, they can make them at Kinko's and they can bring them in. We need to authenticate all the ballots to make sure they're legit ballots. Now, that's just one part of the whole situation. And they're just kind of clinging on to that because it is one of the most absurd, and they can kind of gaslight the public. Yeah, they can gaslight the public and go, look how absurd this is. Still QAnon's going on. They're still looking for bamboo. This is ridiculous. But that's just not the case. They're looking at everything in this audit. They want to look at every single process, every step of the way. I've talked to assemblymen, representatives, that are the assemblymen. I've talked to state senators. I'm going to continue to talk to them. I talked to people who are running the audit, representatives and stuff. They're looking at every aspect to look at this election. Not so much, this is not about Donald Trump or Joe Biden. This is about making sure our elections are fair going forward. And changing the framework. And in fact, the interview I had with Mark Fincham, he said twice, he goes, if we do this audit and we get the results and the results say, hey, this is the evidence, Joe Biden won the election, he's going to accept it.
Yeah, I saw
a lot of representatives are going to accept it. State senators are going to accept it. However, the whole process, and it doesn't take a lot of digging, it just takes a little bit of digging, is very, very lacking transparency. And we don't know what's what. And there seems to be a lot of funny business. If you just look at the numbers, if you look at the math, you got to say something like this is very necessary. And not only that, Joanne and Kel, we saw the whole process. They should be doing this with every single elections, the way they have the whole, lazy Susan on the table spinning. 3 people look at it. One person lays it down. They put it in there. They authenticate the ballot. And that's just one process. But this is necessary, and nobody should be against double checking our work, making sure our P's and Q's add up. But the establishment doesn't want this to change, so therefore they're belittling the whole situation.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cal.
No, I was going to say the only time I have been at a board of elections on election night was in Broward County, California, Florida,
Florida.
excuse me, for Tim Canova's race in 2018. And I can tell you, of course, I'm not an expert to the level of a lot of the people you've been interviewing recently, but just being there in the facility, you're behind a glass wall. You really, it looks like a giant mess. There were trucks lined up out, down the road. As Tim Canova pointed out, there was no, chain of custody. The chain of custody was broken in that situation. And just like it's a black box, the proprietary software that we can't see. I don't see how very many people, even as observers and in a board of elections where they're counting, can really tell what's going on either, because you've got all these machine, the tabulators, it's just really difficult. So the whole thing, I think the best thing that can come out of what happened with this 2020 election is that the election security topic is no longer just something on the, I don't know what to call it, the Democrat side, the blue side, because that activist community has been largely, Democrats. But now we've got people from all sides looking at things, and everyone should just want transparency so we can have, as John Brakey says, elections that are trackable and easily verifiable. So
Trackable, transparent, trackable, and publicly verified, I think is his thing. And Brandon Slayton, who's the chairman of the Maricopa County Libertarian Party, who's also part of this whole audit process. The Libertarian Party isn't there to make it bipartisan. We've encouraged the Green Party to get their butts in there and get involved, but he says the same thing too. And he's parroting that, and that's something that's really, really necessary to do, because they have to be traceable, trackable, and then publicly verified. Because as you know, I mean, the whole system from everything, and I always talk about it. I mean, one of the first people who kind of sat down with me and started talking about election integrity after I got a little taste of what happened in 2016 with the Jared Beck case in South Florida, when the Bruce Spiva of the Democratic Party, the lawyer, said, hey, we can go into the back room filled with cigar smoke and pick whoever we want. Well, that really burnt my ass, and that lit a candle. And one of the persons I sat down to talk to, she explained to me, and she says it's like a spider. There's many legs, and once you go and look at one or two legs and you stop the irregularities there, or the bad behavior, the other four legs are in motion. And we need to learn this about our elections. And like you said too, Kel, it used to be about progressives. It was a small group of progressives and some Democrats that were really into election integrity. And you had tiny pockets on the right side, conservative side, maybe for different reasons, but they were also involved. But now we had this election, and every single Trump person now is becoming like, wow, their minds are getting into it. They're getting into election integrity. They're understanding how elections work. And they just had an online kind of like summit. And after people had spoke, and it didn't get too QAnon-y, you know what I'm saying? It was mostly about the basics and whatnot. And they had some great conservative people who were just election integrity activists that stuck to the point. They started breaking out into groups to teach people what's what. They had like 10 different groups. And they had somebody, my friend, Ellen Swenson, who works for the EIPCA. She's their data analysis for California and Nevada. She's amazing. She broke into a group and she was explaining to people, how do you obtain information about the voter registration polls to make sure they're fair? And then somebody else broke out and they talked about, the actual process of voting, which the Convo Couch, that's one of our things. Like, we go and follow the actual process of voting and stuff. And it's just terrible in the primaries. The Democratic Party has broke it on purpose. So therefore, they can move people into mail-ins. But what's that? The mail-ins you got to look at and stuff. How are these ballots made? You would be surprised, Joe, about how many people didn't even know the contractor who made those ballots in Maricopa County. They didn't understand the process. They didn't know who held the contract. We need to get educated on this stuff. And let me tell you something. The conservatives now are kicking the leftists' butt right now because we were happy with the results. We're going to ignore the process on the left.
Okay.
Dead wrong.
So I actually witnessed that being said. It's our duty to just be quiet now. Nope. I couldn't believe it. So no, that's not okay. And I think, we need to make sure we follow a story. If it sounds QAnon-y, like you said, I think why not follow it? That doesn't mean that you're promoting it. Maybe you disprove it and then you show to those people that believed that actual conspiracy theory that look, we did the investigation and that's not accurate. But if you
Yeah.
don't, if you just ignore it, then those things are going to flourish.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, well, that's the thing. We're talking, like you said, it's not about where the ballots came from, bamboo in China, and Xi Jinping is trying to get in there. Whatever. We should authenticate the ballots. And that's something we got to look at too. Our absentee ballots, our mail-in ballot situation, nobody knows the process. It's done in secrecy. So if they mail out ballots to everybody on the voters roll and 80% of those ballots go to where they got to get and are accepted, what happens to the other 20%, right? Does it go back to the printer? Do they destroy them? Do they shred them? Do they leave them on? None of that stuff there. There's no chain of custody of those things. And when you have ballot harvesting in half your states, a nefarious character could just buy those ballots and can just walk them in. And it's a very serious problem. There's a reason why mail-in ballots have been just stricken from the rules. They have been eliminated in a lot of other countries, or they're done in very small specific areas, or for specific reasons, because just like Jimmy Carter and James Baker said in 2014, and I don't want to be parenting these guys too much because right now I don't know where their heads are, especially Jimmy Carter. He's got TDS, but he said in 2014 in a bipartisan commission that the area most open for fraudulent activity in our election systems is with the absentee and mail-in ballots. So recognize it, understand it. How do we fix it? And here's the important thing, Kelley. Yeah, they're cool. It's our job to shut up right now. We want to be silent, right, Joe? But the problem is, who does it really affect? It affects the grassroots candidates that we've been fighting for so long, because if they're going to cheat them there, it's easy to cheat you down below. And all those people that we love, that we wanted to see in office, like the Tim Canovas, like the Raji Robs, like the Angelica Duenas, they're the ones who are going to get cheated. And if you allow this to happen, leftist progressives, they'll do it to him. They'll do it to your candidate too. And we will get nada.
If we haven't learned that yet about blowback,
Yeah.
then, we are very foolish people.
Right. But, I have to tell you, though, within that same community is a not friendly attitude towards the Green Party and towards those progressive candidates that want to go up again because they see them as splitting the vote. That mentality is still there. And there's a lot of anger at Green Party independence. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the Green Party split right now, right? Especially in Arizona, right? You have the independent Green Party and you have the Green Party. They're kind of like arguing with each other, whatever. I don't know the whole situation, but they're not recognized as a state, it's called a state-centric state. I think a party-centric state, meaning that the parties are allowed to be in there for all the audits, whatnot, and to hold everything accountable. And I don't even know if they recognize the Green Party in Arizona. But here's the thing. Just like all these people with the mentality, well, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to change the Democratic Party. Hey, Azalu, good luck. I don't think you're going to ever be able to do it. I'm done trying to do that and stuff. But if you're an independent-minded person in the Democratic Party, in the Libertarian Party, in the Green Party, and then you step up and say, I don't care what some of my members say, all right? And I contacted the vice chair. I said, get your butt in there. Elections matter. They're going to screw the Green Party over. And the Green Party is known. Jill Stein,
right.
Michigan, the Green Party has done some valuable work for us as well. So there's individual pockets of all these parties of people who want to step up and have fair elections. Do it. Get in the game. Step up, fight. Who cares about the partisan bickering? Just do what you got to do and say, hey, listen, I'm going to stand for fair elections. And that's it. End of story. I don't care what my party says.
There's a great episode of Lulu Frystat and Benny Smith's stream, Smart Elections, where they talk specifically about what Green Party candidates, what they bring to the election integrity efforts. So check it out. It's really good.
I'm gonna. And I'm waiting for them to call me to get on that show. Benny, Lulu, hit me up. I want to come on and talk.
Okay,
so before we get into the weeds, there are going to be a lot of people listening to this, hopefully still with us, who aren't familiar with what kinds of problems. So if we could just do could you do a quick high level of what happened with Arizona during the election, what has happened since, what happened in the courts, and how it came about that they're doing this audit, and what are some of the main problems that have convinced so many people that there's a real problem with that state?
So I talked to Mark Fincham about it, and he's in the assembly. He's Representative Fincham. And now, obviously, if you don't know out there, it was a state Senate that triggered the audit, and they got to pick out the work plan and the vendors and all that stuff, the consultants to go in there and do the audit. But what triggered this was, and I just talked about the other day, and people, please go to the YouTube. I should have it up in Rockfin, but I will, and look at that
link
interview.
All that stuff. I'll link it all in the show
Yeah.
notes.
So I asked him, I said, what was the main thing that triggered this audit? What really got you involved to say, hey, what's going on? First off, right off the bat is after the election, thousands of emails started coming in. Representatives in the state legislation in Arizona, especially Maricopa County, started getting a ton of emails. What's going on? Something's not right here. Something stinks in Denver, or something stinks in Arizona in this case.
Phoenix, do you mean?
What's that?
Denver or Phoenix?
Phoenix. I don't know why I said Denver. That's an old something's rotten in Denmark. I think
Denmark.
Right?
Yeah.
I got it wrong and I said Denver. Something stinks in Phoenix. Something stinks in Maricopa County. They started calling up. They started saying, "Hey, man, what's going on?" They started emailing. Something's just not right. This does not add up. There was no enthusiasm for Joe Biden. There was a ton of enthusiasm for Donald Trump. We were looking at stuff on the TV. It didn't add up. We saw votes lose, and while Biden went up, and it just didn't seem right. And then all of a sudden, there were some whistleblowers in Maricopa County. And one whistleblower from Pima County sent out an email saying that in Pima County, there were 35,000 votes distributed to Democratic candidates across the board, and insinuating that the same thing might have happened in Maricopa. So Philip Waldron, I think his name is, who was an old Army colonel that worked in cybersecurity, who ended up testifying at the first hearing they had that Mark Fincham threw, said that he saw the email. It was an anonymous source, and he started looking at the pattern analysis, the voting patterns. And a lot of people don't look at that. The reason why a lot of us election integrity activists, we look at those patterns, those Dr. Shivas, those Phil Evans patterns, because we know that those patterns are pretty much stuck by. In other words, when Brian Williams will announce that with 62% of the vote in, we're going to call Texas for Joe Biden. And we go, wait a second, there's 62, 63% in. There's still a lot of votes still to come in. How can you call it for Joe Biden? Well, they said the voting pattern, the sample size is enough to know that Bernie Sanders will not be able to catch Joe Biden. But in this particular case, even though Trump had large leads in Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, all of a sudden we see these votes come in and these charts just going saying, hey, something's wrong. The math gives us clues to where to look to say something's not adding up here. Well, the same thing happened in Arizona when they started looking at the data and they're like, wait, something's wrong over here. We're having an unusual spike for Joe Biden and we need to look at this. Okay, well, you don't have access to go in there and look at things. You can't look at the software. It's proprietary. The Maricopa County Board of Supervisors took all the ballots and locked them up. They're not talking about what went where. So that was one of the things that really came into play. Another thing that came into play in Arizona was the adjudication process. Now, electronic adjudication is when the tabulation machine catches a ballot and says something's wrong, it's an overvote, or the ballot's not marked properly, and it now has to be looked at by an official and then adjudicated and sent through. Well, the adjudication process, according to the EAC, the Electronic Emissions Commission, Administrative Commissions, I think it's called. It was created by the federal government years ago under the Obama administration, who actually certifies the machines and the companies for the machines. Just a complete fake bullshit organization. Well, their numbers say that one ballot, I think, out of every 250,000 ballots can be adjudicated for it to be normal. They had, and that's something like 0.0000%. Well, they had almost 11% of ballots adjudicated in Maricopa. It was the report. They don't know if that's exactly correctly on, but a whistleblower came forth and she says, I'm really nervous about the adjudication process because the Dominion software people who were working with us election night found a way to spread out the adjudicated ballots throughout, mix them in with other batches so they would send them through. So they had a crazy amount of ballots adjudicated. But I think the number one thing, and Mark Fincham said once again, it's back to that pattern analysis. When you see that and you're like, something's wrong over here. These votes are not adding up. They're very unusual. And the mainstream media will try to swing it a certain way. They'll try to search certain things to cover it up. But there was so much evidence there in Arizona, and they had people once again on the record, and they filled out affidavits, and this is evidence that said something's wrong. So they just started the whole process of having hearings, taking up experts in software, taking up experts in pattern analysis, taking up experts on adjudication processes and actually absentee ballots. And they had been fighting long and hard, but eventually they got this full forensic audit that they wanted to get, and justifiably so, because if we do find a lot of funny business or we find nonsense and stuff like that, I'm not hoping that Donald Trump comes back and they change the election. I'm with you, ladies. I'm hoping we change the framework and the process to do so.
We have a long way to go for that.
Yeah, we really do.
You mentioned the EAC, and I had to double check because it's been a while since I looked at it, but the EAC has voluntary voting system guidelines. Did you know that they're voluntary? Yep. So I remember when I first read that, I thought, what good is this? So they're telling ES&S or Dominion, these are these are our guidelines we think you should follow, but they don't have to.
Exactly. And I think along with the EAC and the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, the way they lied to the public or obfuscated. I'll use the word obfuscated because they said we've had 2 audits, we've had 3 audits, and it should be sufficient. But you know as well as I do, these aren't audits. These are the companies that are recommended by the EAC. I forgot the name of. There's 2 companies in particular that certify the machines pre-election, and then they go back and they do a logic and accuracy test, which means they take 30 ballots, they run them through, and they say, "Oh, it's working right. It's working good right now," and they pass that off as an audit. Mm-hmm. The other audit they did was they counted 0.04% of the ballots and say, "Oh, we had a sufficient audit." So they've been lying to the public, and a lot of people have been calling them out. There's been a lot of John Brakey, who is an audit expert, Ron Lutters, who's an audit expert, and other audit experts going, these are not audits. We need a real audit, and there should be nothing wrong to the people for double checking the work of what's going on. I think more than anything, they're just really afraid that the actual whole wanky, destructive, bullshit, crappy election system we have across the country is going to finally be exposed. And if we get this right, it's a long ways away, but we got to start the process. But if we get this right, then we, the people, can really actually obtain real power and throw all these assholes out.
Can I ask a high-level question?
Sure.
So November, December, January, February, March, April, May. It's been 6 months since the election. Where have all the ballots? Where are the physical ballots? Where are the databases, the machines themselves? And why did it take this long to get to the audit point?
All right, I'm going to work my way backwards from the questions, because why did it take so long should be the first question. Because the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, and this is something that came into play right here, they were resistant the whole way to allowing the state Senate have a forensic audit. They fought them tooth and nail. It went in and out of court. Subpoenas were served, holding people in contempt. It was still COVID going on, so it was that slowed down the whole process. But the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, who run the election, thought that they had the right to say, no, we did our audits, it's adequate. But the state, and this is where it came into a state versus county issue, the state says, no. At the end of the day, we're the ultimate supervisors of the elections in Arizona. We can do an audit if we want. Well, it had to go through the courts, left and right. They resisted the whole way, but eventually, finally, it got to a point where they were able to say, okay, you now get the full audit. You get the full forensic audit. We wanted everything. And this is something that the very first hearing when Giuliani was there in Arizona, and he looked over to the Philip Waldron, who was that ex-colonel who did cybersecurity. He said to the colonel, will a forensic audit find everything out? And he says, yeah, if we have a full forensic audit, we'll get everything we need to get. So therefore, they finally fought and they got it. So now here comes the process of the ballots. 2.1 million ballots, just under 2.1 million ballots. Well, they're currently with the consultants or the team, the contractors, if you want to say, I shouldn't say consultants, the contractors, the number one being Cyber Ninjas. In the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, there's 2.1 million ballots. We showed them on our live stream. They're all secured, and they're going through the process of being hand counted. then hit with an ultralight to make sure the paper's authentic, and then taking a picture to see if there's any kinesthetic fold marks, whatnot. So that's one process of going over the count right now. They're trying to authenticate the ballots. They're trying to count the ballots by hand because that's important, because as we know, one of the major problems when it comes to the tabulation machines, proprietary software, what you put in might not be the exact answer as what you get out if somebody's behind the scenes controlling it. So they do have the ballots there, and that's what they're doing. Now, here's the problem, though, Joe and Kel. I love when I get all Jersey with you. To have a full forensic audit, we need full cooperation from the Maricopa County's Board of Supervisors and the Secretary of State, Katie Hobbs, who's been nothing but a side road deterrent, roadblock, hurdle, all the step of the way. And that's what they're doing. They're trying to muddy the waters and stuff like that. To have the forensic audit, you need certain things. They had gained possessions of all the tabulation machines. They copied all the data inside them, handed back the physical machines. So now we have all the data for all the machines. The problem is there's a set of secondary passwords in there that we haven't been given. When I say we, the people, I'm meaning the auditors, haven't been given the password. So they contacted the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors and said, you have to give us the password, because what they're trying to look into is the administrative logs. Who was in there in the back of the house? Who was going in? Who did what? If you have those administrative logs, you can see who did what, who looked at what, and if they did any tampering or what's going on. Well, they're saying they don't have the passwords, that Dominion has it. So now Dominion's saying, we've given you everything you needed, and now we don't have the passwords to do that forensic look on the administrative logs. The second thing they asked for is the router logs, which I believe they're called the slug logs. I could be wrong on. Once again, not a technical expert, but they wanted the routers from the county. And they wanted this because they wanted to see if the tabulation machines were working with the internet, talking to somebody else. It's a big no-no. And as you know, we've been discovering this up. We've been blowing this up. You know the work, Kelley, with Tim Canova, that we knew these machines were connected to the internet, and it's illegal.
He filmed that in Broward County in 2018, that they were, in fact, connected to the internet.
We've proven this over and over again, and that's a big no-no, because if they're connected to the internet, even the combo couch, when we went up to New Hampshire during the primary over there, got the guy to admit that there's a SIM card in the machine, which means it could be accessed from a different server outside of the state, outside of the country. It doesn't make a difference. That's illegal, and yet they don't want to give up those router logs, and they're saying that if they gave up, it's the blueprint to Maricopa County, and this is what the county is saying. If they gave that up, it would put law enforcement in danger. So they're trying, once again, another hurdle where the auditors and the auditor team, who is Ken Bennett, who's the ex-Secretary of State, who's now the head of this audit, saying, no, we need those things. You have to give it to us. And the third part that's really upsetting, and Maricopa County, really, a lot of people have to start really calling this out for what it is. It's the absentee mail-in ballot process with signatures, Kelley and Joe. This thing is just disgusting. Maricopa County mails out their absentee ballots to the voter. The voter then sends it back. It goes to Maricopa County. They don't open them. They collect them all. They bring them back to the contractor, which his name is Runbeck, Runbeck. Runbeck then will canvass the envelopes, take the ballots out, run them through the machine, and send the signature on the envelope digitally to the county for them to check it in their database. So pretty much their whole verification of signatures and scrutinizing is awful. It's worse than California. And that's how they're doing it. Well, guess what? They haven't handed over the envelopes to the auditors. And in fact, Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State, and some of the Maricopa Board of County Supervisors have got the auditors and the state Senate, and I don't know if to agree, I have to look into this a little bit more, to not let Cyber Ninjas, which is the main contractor, verify those signatures. And I have two pieces of proof I put up there for you, Joe. Those two Twitter videos, that's straight from the horse's mouth to prove that we don't have these three items right now. Does it mean we won't get them? Does it mean the auditors won't get them? Not necessarily. But right now, it is a very serious concern, because if we can't access that stuff, if we can't access the administrative logs, then we can't see what's up. And if we can't get the routers logs, the slug logs, then we can't see what's up. And if we don't get the signatures, which a lot of people around this country, because they believe that this particular election, a lot of the people who are looking for funny business, they think it's with clustering, not taking away votes, but adding extra votes, because the mail-in ballot situation was just out of control. So these are three hurdles that the state Senate has to get to work, get on it, get Katie Hobbs to give us this stuff. Because remember, it's a 22-month time limit. That's how long all the stuff has to be kept for.
Mhm.
And in a situation which we also experienced was that they're writing to the DOJ now and saying, we have concerns with the way this audit is being conducted. They're not keeping people's privacy intact. So there's concern that the feds could come in, seize everything, take it and say, you're not playing by the rules, and then run out the clock of 22 months, burn everything, and it's lights out, game over. So there's a lot of hurdles in place.
They grab the evidence, announce an investigation, and just sit on it,
That's it.
hold on.
Or
They
in
got
like
16 months to burn.
or in Broward County, the ballots were destroyed, as you know,
Beforehand.
before the 22 months.
And nobody went to jail.
Right.
Yeah. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz is still in office.
Yes.
But our elections are fair.
Right.
But Kelley and Joe, if you want to play those two videos, because that's straight from the horse's mouth. That's Ken Bennett. He's the ex-Secretary of State. I encourage people, go over to the Maricopa County Audit Twitter page. They're always posting stuff over there. He's giving press conferences. John Brakey's involved, which I think is great optics when you have a Democrat there, a progressive Democrat, with all these, because that's what they're saying, right? It's a Republican audit over here.
Yeah.
The Q auditors are looking for bamboo. This is disgusting. We need to stop this. But now you have a progressive Democrat going, hey, I love Joy Reid and Keith Olbermann, and I don't know why, but this is necessary. We need to get it done. And I think that John Brakey's got a lot of guts for doing that, whether you like him or not. In this particular situation, I think it's great. So, yeah, you can hear it right from the horse's mouth, and go to that Twitter, take a look at the updates and see what's going on.
Yeah, I'm going to link all this stuff and these people as best I can in the show notes. And I want to ask you something more about the DOJ, but first let's have a look at these videos. It's just two of them, and they're a couple minutes.
Yep.
Bear with me a second while I get this set up.
We received all the machines that were used in the election.
Yeah.
And an IT company that is contracted with the prime contractor who was selected by the Senate to do the audit. They have downloaded all of the forensic data off of those machines.
Okay.
But they ran into a second password in some of the ballot scanning machines that are used out at the polling locations that Maricopa County is telling us that they don't have that password.
Okay.
And without that second password, we can't get into the administrative functions of the machine. So
those are the logs, right? That will tell you who accessed the machines or not?
Those are the router logs and things like that. So there's two different things that we have not been we have not yet received from Maricopa County, and that is, well, among a few others, but one of the things that we haven't received is the secondary password that allows our IT auditor to get in and see the administrative functions of the machine and how those are set up. And they say they've given us all the passwords they have, so that must mean that the only people that have the passwords that we need are the Dominion people. So that concerns us a little bit, that Maricopa County is essentially saying that they don't have all the passwords to their own election management system.
So what can you not obtain without that specific password?
You can't get into the administrative function of the machine.
Which is important.
I think so.
Because we want to know.
That's where the setup is. And
exactly. We want to know who touched what.
And then there's also the routers and the hubs and things like that would have logs in them as to was anything hooked up to the internet, which is not supposed to be, and we hope it wasn't. But to verify that, we would need the router logs, and the Splunk logs, I think they're called.
Yeah.
And those are way beyond my level of expertise in IT. I'm a truck driver and an accountant. So.
Yep.
Okay, let me do the other one.
Yeah.
That they have given us all the passwords that they have to give us, and that they can't give us the router logs because the sheriff's department somehow uses that internet system and other county employees, and we might end up compromising social security numbers and county employee health records. So we're all kind of wondering why those are compromised by getting information from the election department.
So we don't have everything there. What about this I heard about with the signatures? Are we going to authenticate and check the signatures, or is that not part of this audit?
It's not part of the scope of work for cyber ninjas.
Okay.
But I think it is would be of value to have some way of it, at least checking the images on the envelopes. Maybe not comparing them to the voter signatures yet, but just seeing were there signatures on all the envelopes.
Yeah.
If we find a bunch of blanks, then
Yeah.
maybe we need to.
Have you gotten all the envelopes?
No, we don't have the envelopes yet, but we have the images of the signature boxes
Yeah.
that were supposed to be from the envelopes.
Gotcha. But we don't have the actual envelopes yet.
Not yet.
That's important too as well. Okay. So
Right.
those are a couple dead ends we're into. That's that stuff.
And you can see that last tweet right below that. That is the excuse of why it says routers are the blueprints to the county data. Providing that information puts lives at risk. It's bullshit. I understand what's going on. You say it might be able to put, they still have to hand that over to see if that internet was working with the tabulation machines on election night. And they're trying to hide that. Right. So they're making excuses on that. And you also heard Ken Bennett, once again, ex-Secretary of State. He's the head of this audit. He has the plans and everything. He reports to the media, reports to the Senate. He even talks about the fact that, they don't have the signatures. They only have the digital images from Runbeck, who is the contractor for paper ballots, not the actual wet signatures. And the way they do that is so messed up, as well as they don't have the administrative logs to go in and look and see what's going on. So right now, this full forensic audit is anything but. Doesn't mean they can't work past it. And I'm going to be speaking to Senator Sonny Borrelli on Monday to talk more about this. He's a state senator, about what they're going to do to go around this situation. If, in fact, Cyber Ninjas, who's one of the main contractors working on this situation, really do have a great setup for counting with the Lazy Susans. All that stuff I think is amazing. We should have it for every single election. There's cameras everywhere on top of everything. You can't do anything. But they're not going to allow them to do the signature verification. That doesn't mean they can't go out and go get another contractor to verify it too as well. But that's going to be another whole process in itself. But it's an important process because, as we know, a lot of people in Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Pennsylvania, we saw all this video of all these Republicans getting thrown out of the room from and not being able to scrutinize the signatures to authenticate these ballots. That's why that's important in this part of the audit as well. So hopefully the Senate will find a way to punch through and get this information.
Let me just ask you a quick question about
Joanne, do you mind? Can you pull that screen back up? Oh, sorry.
Which one?
I'm just curious about, there was one more tweet that had the 3 videos. There was a tweet underneath there. I thought maybe we're going to go over it, but the one here regarding obstructed legislation that would have required robust manual election audits across the board, not just in the race they want to look at, not just the vendor they want to cherry pick, but across the board, this gives them unclean hands. Fraud it.
Look, the hashtag fraud it.
And look how many views she has over there. And she was responding to me. They kind of put that on my tweet, and it's kind of crazy because, just the other day she kind of defended John Brakey for going at Keith Olbermann was going after John Brakey, and she defended John Brakey. But you can watch her reasons why they shouldn't have election. But once again, here's the problem: these Democrats, they play team sports. The Republicans don't deserve a audit this time because the Democrats didn't get the audit in 2016, and then George Bush didn't give a hand count over here. So we shouldn't let them do that. It's playing team sports. And she even says their hands are dirty, and she puts her hands up are dirty. I do a little thing, and I said my hands are clean because I'm not playing team sports. Because to play team sports, you're going to be hypocritical. And you're not going to be looking for the truth. You're just going to be looking for the reason that best suits your side, team red or team blue. And that's a big no-no when it comes to election integrity. You ladies know this. People out there they have TDS. They're playing team sports. And that is slowing down this whole process. In this particular election, what it really did was shine a light on the real election integrity activists and the people who are just so egotistically driven that just want to get their own name out there. So thank you for that as well to moving forward. And like I said, you might not like John Brakey in a lot of situations, and I can't understand his love from some of the Democratic players that he's still really cool with, but
Keith Olbermann.
Yeah, and Joy Reid and Katie Hobbs. Like, I can't stand these people. Like, I wrote a tweet about Hobbs. I wrote a tweet about Olbermann. Like, I go after these people viciously. I'm not going to hold back anymore because they're just carrying water for the freaking deep state and the establishment, and I ain't letting it have it no more. But in this particular situation, he has stepped up. He could easily have TDS and say, no, this election was fair. He can easily do that because we know how much but instead he goes, no, there's a lot of phony stuff going on. We need to look into it. We need to have an audit, and we also need to have audits moving forward.
But it really shouldn't matter what party you're with in this.
And that's why I tip my hat to Breaky in this moment right here, because he is doing the right thing. And bringing in the Libertarian Party too, doing the right thing. Because he got shit for that.
Yeah, right. Yes, of course. So Joanne,
yeah. So some of the headlines and, whatever, a lot of these headlines are just garbage, sensational garbage, but there are some people in the mainstream media who, in my view, they give away where the problems are by what they scream the loudest about, particularly, I don't know, somebody like Rachel Maddow. So Rachel Maddow seems to be celebrating the fact that the Justice Department is going to step in. I'm not sure about all the thing. I didn't read the whole Justice Department letter, though I will link that as well. But one thing I did see, this is something that I had really wished would have happened in Pennsylvania and areas closer to me. I was hoping that with such a massive amount of mail-in ballots, I was hoping that they would just take a sampling of those ballots and then contact the people and say, did you vote? Is this your vote? Just get them to sign a little affidavit. Is this yours? Is this not? And apparently that, if I'm understanding it right, in Arizona, that was one of the things they wanted to do. They wanted to just sample some of the votes and ask the person if that was their ballot. And that is the thing that the Justice Department stepped in on. And now they've backed off. They're not going to do that, because your guy that you were interviewing, he already says they're not going to do a signature check.
Well, Cyber Ninjas isn't. That doesn't mean they can't go outside and get another contractor. Okay. But that is the game, right? That's the game from the establishment, or the Democratic establishment right now, is to say, you can't use this person, you can't use this person, and agree on this person who's friendly to them and is going to give them the results they want. We're seeing that with the audit that's going on now, that's about to take place in New Hampshire, which is going to take place where the people are going, no. We'll have our own funding and we'll support somebody else, our own contractors, to go in there. So that is the battle that is going on. And that is going to be a hard battle, because there will be privacy issues that come into place. But like Breaky says, voting's a private issue. Counting is a public issue. But that is something we need to look at, these voter rolls. And the trick is, you got guys out there like Greg Palast who say, hey, if you remove names from the voter rolls, that's racist, and they're doing that stuff, and that's why they're doing it. And they're trying to stop black people from voting. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they use all the time. But you cannot deny the fact that those polls, those logs, the registration poll, they're never clean. They're always dirty, meaning people move, people die, they don't update them properly. So if you just mail out ballots to everybody on that registration poll, you're going to have what? A lot of extra ballots. And what happened this year? We had more votes than we've ever had in the history. And people really want to believe that Joe Biden got 12 million more votes than Barack Obama. You can't sell that to me ever. Guy couldn't fill my living room. But that is a situation we have to understand, and the people have to understand. And that's why they're doing certain things in Georgia. The bill that they say, oh, it's awful, this is the new Jim Crow. Jackie Robinson would be proud that the Major League Baseball moved their game out of Atlanta. No, if Jackie Robinson was here, he would tell you he would be disgusted that you're trying to compare this to Jim Crow. They were securing absentee ballots by verifying by having a driver's license, an ID, or the last four of your Social Security. They were pretty much digressing to what was in play before COVID, when they removed all these restrictions. And that's what they do in election integrity. When it comes to elections, the legislative bodies or the establishment, they tip their hat. Nancy Pelosi in the HEROES Act, the reason why it didn't get passed after the CARES Act is because she wanted to change all these rules. And they were all about eliminating verification on absentee ballots. Federally, she wanted to change the law. And Mitch McConnell and Trump said, get the hell out of here. We're not letting you change these rules. So what did they do? Time Life magazine talked about it. They got into play. They privately funded all these other corporations, these NGOs, to go out there, go around the legislation, enact emergency measures, and take away those verifications on absentee ballots. So they killed the chain of custody. They killed the verification process. And that's why we have so many ballots out there like crazy. And that's why Georgia went and changed that rule to make sure that that stays in play. No, they're going to verify these absentee ballots like they should. They're not just going to mail them out to everybody on the registration polls. You have to request it, and that's okay. I say this all the time. You cannot give up security for accessibility.
Right.
The most accessible election would be if you had no security whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? But that's what the progressives, they get emotionally twisted. Hey, they're killing us accessibility over here. And then the progressives go, how could you do this law? It's like Jim Crow. You can't even give anybody water. But then if you read the bill, it says, no. Campaign workers can't give out water or food, meaning they can't buy or solicit votes, but poll workers can. So now you're lying to everybody because you know these rules will affect the establishment and will hurt them.
Let's just plug Fiorella's article here too, real quick on that.
Good.
Yeah, so I will again link that in the show notes. But Fiorella basically just shot all kinds of holes in the claims by the Democratic establishment and most of the media about this horrible Georgia voter law that was passed, and she just disproved a lot of their major claims. So I recommend people go and have a look at that.
Yeah, it's amazing. She started off as a Twitter feed. We went through it left and right. She spent her time. Fiorella is one of those people. She reads like Rain Man. Like she looks over and is like, yep, 47, whatever he says. But she reads so great. And then she went out there and she dissected this bill left and right. And a lot of our personal experiences, like the three things they were harping on, one of the things they were harping on more than anything, Joe Biden was like, you can't give anybody water. That's just mad. Well, we had videos during the California ADEM elections, which are like the people who get voted in, 7 men, 7 women to the party, each district, and they decide on the funding and the endorsement process. Well, we saw Katie Porter at hers wearing an orange shirt, and everybody that was running in her slate that she was supporting was wearing the same color shirt, and she's working the line, and then somebody was giving out cupcakes. They were soliciting votes. Katie Porter shouldn't even be allowed to be there.
No.
And she was nervous when we confronted her. And then I tried to ask her about Venezuela and she changed her mind. But you're not supposed to be able to solicit votes. We left that particular location and went to the next one, which was closer to East LA. Well, guess what? There was a yellow bus there that had busted a bunch of people. And they had to do that district over because the claim is that they picked up their friends. In other words, some establishment candidate, I think it was Jimmy Gomez at the time. Well, his lackey said, hey, Democratic voters, grab your friend. We'll pick you up. We're going to take everybody for donuts and coffee, and then we're going to drop you off to vote to do your civic duty. And they gave them a list of who to vote for. So they took them for coffee and donuts and then brought over to the polling site to vote, and they got called on it. You cannot solicit votes. That's why that law was in there. Fiorella mentioned that in our article. We showed examples that we, the Combo Couch, a 3-person team with no budget, were able to catch and show. This is why you can't do that. But don't worry, nobody's going to die of thirst because the poll workers can give out water. So stop lying and obfuscating, Joe Biden.
Why do I keep thinking of those bus trips they run around here for the casinos for senior citizens, like a free bus ride and roll of quarters?
Yeah. They also lied too about the time you can vote. They've actually added an extra Saturday in that bill. And something else they added is that the digital images are going to be put online. They added, and I still think they're trying to mess with the language over there, when it can be put up and how it can be put up and in what pixelation. But Garland Favorito is somebody who fought for that in that new bill too, to make it more transparent. So that's another thing they did. So they actually extended the time, gave an extra weekend day, an extra Saturday to do so. They just eliminated campaign workers for handing out food or water to try to solicit votes. And they digressed to having proper identification on your ballots and stuff. Now, Jack Kemp has said, it's not Jack Kemp, it's Governor Kemp. I forgot his name. Is it Brian Kemp?
Brian Kemp.
Yeah.
Brian Kemp. He's already said that 96% of the people 96% of the voters in Georgia have the proper ID to vote. Stacey Abrams quoted that only 88% have. So if you say it's somewhere in between, it's right. Less than 10% of the people don't have the means necessary to vote by mail. But through the Secretary of State's website. They can register on there. They can get on there to vote and stuff like that. They can get the last four of their social security number. They can put their ID or their state ID. So there's ways of getting people on that, but they're twisting that and saying this is the new Jim Crow. And on top of it, it's not just a person of color thing. You have a lot of poor people in Georgia that are white in the northern part of Georgia that don't have that proper ID. It's more of a class issue, and they're still twisting that and moving the All-Star game out of Atlanta and everything. And even on top of it, why would you punish the citizens of Atlanta who have small businesses? And here comes the All-Star game. They've been suffering and dying with this whole COVID thing. Now they have a chance to make a few bucks. Why would you punish them for what the legislation did on top of it?
So that they'll
It really,
pressure
really
their
does stink.
lawmakers. That's why. I mean, this is obvious, right?
Yeah.
That's why you make a population suffer, so that they put the pressure or they reject their leaders. I mean, this is what we do in regime changes.
Yeah.
At some point, I mean, I have a lot of respect for a lot of people that have done this work in election integrity, you know, down in the weeds for a decade or more, some of them. I think a lot of times they do forget that the general public, this stuff is just gobbledygook. I mean, you know, it's very hard to understand all of what's happening. But I think it's frustrating to me because I don't understand why everyone doesn't get together and say, okay, instead of scrambling around down here okay, audits are great and necessary, but why are we not trying to fix this at the top with the vendors? I mean, this business of a voluntary guidelines, and of course, we don't even know who really owns ES&S.
Exactly.
I think that's where
a voting
really,
machine company for people who don't know.
oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I think it's just elections secret, or not secret
Services and ES&S, election services,
That's
whatever,
okay.
something. Yeah. They're
Yes,
one of
and
the
they
major
actually-
ones. Yeah.
They actually threatened to sue John Brakey's organization. You've probably heard about this, but at one point, Audit USA, his organization, just put up the manual to one of their machines on their website, and they threatened to sue him. So I think that they can keep us busy for another decade or two, scrambling around trying to understand what this machine or that machine does. But until we fight it, I think at the top and build a system that is actually transparent, there's a way to do that. I know I mentioned to you before, but I really love if you could have a guy named John Papa on your show sometime. I'll put you in touch with him, but he works for a big IT company in national security group. And he has created a system, and he welcomes anyone else's input, anyone that has knowledge in that area, to, if they see something about his system that they don't think is right, but he's got it broken down into these basically compartments where each part is verified. You'll have to take a look at it, or maybe you can interview him, because I think until we do that, and these big companies can't just have, I mean, they're getting billions of dollars, and the secretary, who's making the decisions of which machines to buy. I mean, we're never going to get anywhere. So I hope to see effort there, like get everybody behind one thing. Like, okay, if you have a problem with this system, this is how it works. How do we fix it to make it where it works?
But the problem is, Kel, it's not a sexy topic. It's not a sexy topic. People don't, and you could just I told you earlier before off the record, off air, that, the person who started teaching me a lot about election integrity, compared it to a spider. There's 6 legs or 8 legs. And when you get 2 of those legs and you find 2 of the things, there's 6 other legs or 4 other legs operating when you got to get in there. I look at it more like a poker game, right? Where there's different areas of poker that you have to learn to understand the actual game itself. And I think that's why I've transitioned so perfectly over to elections, because I don't have a lot of those fancy degrees and stuff like that. But when I talk to independent media people who I've argued with or battled with and stuff, they don't understand elections because it is tedious. It's boring. It's not sexy. And if I wanted to, if the Convo Couch wanted to, Fiorella didn't have to spend all that time writing that article. There's other things. She can go and bash AOC and get 10 times the views, right? She could talk electoral politics about what's going on with this bullshit over there and get 10 times the views.
Right. But no, until we fix this, we're not going to fix anything.
We're not getting anything. And it's so important. And people don't want to sit down and learn the tedious ways of the election system. And if you just watch somebody play poker for the first time, it may seem easy, but there's so many different facets to the poker game that you have to learn. And it's kind of funny. When I remember beginning pokers, those are people who just look at elections and go, well, this seems that simple. No, it's not. There's many elements. There's your cards, there's your stack, there's your position, there's your odds. There's all these things you need to learn. And elections are the same way. There's the absentee and mail-ins, there's the actual voting, there's the tabulation, there's the audit, 4 different sections and stuff. And each one of them is intense. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of ways they pick things. And like you said, we try to get people involved, but it's boring.
Yeah, it's too much for the general public, I think. But so when I talked to John about his presentation, which we've recorded, he's an IT guy. He tends to get dry. Well, he's better than most, but he can get kind of dry, and you're kind of going, when you don't understand it, it's hard to follow. So he actually made slides, and he's actually got stick figures. And I was joking. I said, I think we need to have like a Schoolhouse Rock kind of video that shows like how the little ballot goes through here, or what, and exactly how it all
that would be
works.
Genius. Yeah, that would be genius.
I mean, but I'll give you his contact info, because I've been trying for a year and a half to get his system in front of people that I know in the election integrity community, and it just hasn't gotten off the ground. And I don't understand why, because we need to fix it at the top.
But
a lot of people care about the results more than the process. And that's also a problem too, as well. We have a different nation, and the CIA seems to have known how to trigger people and emotionally move people from both sides. And that's the thing. A lot of people, I've heard people say, I don't care if it was rigged or not. We needed to get Trump, and so be it. That's a terrible attitude. That's awful. And if we have that kind of attitude, we'll never get anywhere. We can't be hypocritical. We have to call balls and strikes. If it's a strike, it's a strike. If it's a ball, it's a ball. It doesn't make a difference who's up to bat. You have to be consistent. We have to be honest, because like we said, it might be just Trump this time. Next time, it's going to be every single grassroots candidate that you want to get out there because you went and turned a blind eye and said, I don't care what happened with this election. I was just happy with the results. It's a very serious problem we have in the States here, and it's going to come back to bite us in the ass because, if you start looking at elections right now, I don't know if there was ever an election that was fair. There's too many ways for the establishment to gain the system and keep their power. And they do it all the way down to the city council seat, to your Congress seat, to your state legislative seats. They control the elections because the corporations control the tabulation. And as long as they control the tabulation, we will not have free and fair, transparent elections that are publicly verified. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Let me just go back real quick to that question about the Justice Department. Was that one of the things that they raised an issue about sampling, taking ballots and finding out if that person, verifying with that person, if they did cast this ballot? Was that one of the things?
That was kind of one of the things. They kind of laid a blanket over everything. If you look at the letter, it's more about security altogether. And right before the audit started, a lot of those local news channel guys, which I call them the minor leagues of the MSNBC, the NBC affiliates, this guy Bram Resnick and this other guy Garrett Asher and these other jerk-offs.
Training ground.
Yeah, that's it. They so badly want to work in the mainstream media. So what do? They're not going to be, objective. They're going to be have their own ideology. They're going to have their own plan on what they want to do. They're going to have their own way of doing things, and what they want to do. They're there to just undermine and muddy the waters. So they were going around in the stadium acting like there's no security, even though they didn't even get close to ballots or anything. So they're painting it as a security issue across the board. It's a privacy issue now, right? We have to keep the person's vote private. And in a lot of situations, sometimes people will write their names on the ballot, the mail-in ballot. So therefore that privacy is given up. And if they do that, they should know that they've given up their right for privacy by writing their name on the ballot. So they're using these mechanisms to say, hey, they want to change the voter registration books. They're going to get names on the ballots over here. They're going to really break people's privacy, and everybody has the right to be private when they vote. But like Breaky says, voting is a private act. Counting is a public act. So it's something we have to get by. And once again, somebody has already the information. When you go in to vote, you got to give an ID. So they already know you're there to vote. You know what I'm saying? So they're kind of twisting and obfuscating the whole situation. And they're trying to get the Department of Justice to go in there right now and seize everything. But I can't tell you why. If they did that, it would be a disaster. It would be a disaster.
So So
Wait,
what's
wait,
up
wait,
next?
can you clarify that? If they did what? If who did what?
If the
What would be
FBI
the-
went in there right now and they seized everything, they're going to already have a count from what they counted already, right? If that count is high on Trump and low on Biden, it's going to start an insurrection right there in Maricopa County. They're going to say they stopped the election when Trump had a big lead, and that's bullshit, and that's why they stopped it. You know what I'm saying? So if they have a count and Trump is ahead on that count, and they stop that count going on right now,
Yeah,
forget
I
it.
get you.
Forget it. So
Yeah. So what's up next, like this coming week?
Can I
Like-
just do one more thing on the Justice Department and the sampling of did that person cast that vote? I mean, aren't there ways, couldn't there be ways to assemble a team of lawyers or I don't know, somebody who could conduct that questioning, that survey of the voters, pick out a certain sampling of the ballots, go to the, contact the actual voters, and then couldn't that process be, couldn't somebody just legally sign it and say, yes, I verified this without giving out any of the information about the
Yeah.
individual voter themselves?
it could be done. It could be done. It could,
There's
it
some-
could definitely be done. You don't even have to verify with the voter itself. You just have to verify the signature is the real signature. Now, but that's the case. A lot of older people, you know what I'm saying? Their signature's not the same, whatnot.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
might have to start a process where you reach out to that voter to make sure that's done properly. I think, yeah, it would be tough to do, and they can maintain privacy. However, that's the main thing is, how do we prevent that from happening moving forward? Having so many different, absentee mail-in ballots out there, whatnot. Do we add tracking? Do we add this? Do we add that? You know what I'm saying? There are ways we have to secure it beforehand. And that should be the big lesson right now. The DOJ is saying this thing. The auditors are saying this. The state Senate saying that. Well, let's fix the problem from the root of the problem rather than try to fix it on the surface. Because right now it is trying to fix it on the surface because they've created the problem. Like I said, in Arizona, just like in California, they actually broke the in-day voting. In other words, in Arizona, they shut down 70% of the polling places, the primary in the Democratic Party, which then makes it easy. The same thing in California, the 2020 primary. There were hour lines, 3-hour lines, 4-hour lines. And if you're, an everyday working class person, you don't have that time on your hand. You got to either get to your other job, you need to go home and feed your dog, whatever the case may be. You don't have that time. So they broke that system. So people said, okay, well, a mail-in system will be easier. We don't have to have the hassle. Let's concentrate on building a mail-in system. But now that mail-in system just opens the door for fraud so big, forget about it. So yeah, all these problems, Joanne, they have to be fixed at the core. We're now trying to find a way to move around it on the surface, the bleeding inside. Let's go down to the actual vein that's cut and fix that. So
and do you mind if I tell this one part of the system that it's compartmentalized, but this is very quick. But so it will keep, I'm just reading from John's site here. The second compartment within the polling place is for the voter to deliver their hand-marked paper ballot. The voter verifies that the ballot selections are interpreted correctly by the voting station from the first part. And then with voter verification, the voter's cast vote record of the hand-marked paper ballot is created in an immutable image. So it's verified by the voter in different compartments.
Yep.
And saved. So you'll have to take a look at it. You just have to take a look at it, but I think you should have him on and maybe he can.
we will. I mean, because that's
Yeah.
another thing we talk about right now. It's like there's what are they called? BMDs, ballot marking devices, right?
Mhm.
And a ballot marking device, you touch a touch screen and your ballot comes out, and you're supposed to check your ballot to make sure your votes are good, and then it's supposed to go back into the machine. Or in
Right,
some
and
cases,
that's-
you take it to a ballot box. That's a point of discussion right now. A lot of people, like Benny
Yep.
Smith, they want to go back to hand marked and then turned on in and get rid of the
Right,
ballot
because
marking
once
device.
you run it back under the machine, another machine again, there's room for something else to happen there.
Absolutely. But if we did what Robin Gibson said, do the ballot marker device, your thing comes out and you take it to another ballot box and it goes in that ballot box and there's a camera on that ballot
Yeah.
box. You know what I'm saying? And there's people from the open source community, that always say we need to stick with the ballot marking devices because they go back to what happened in the year 2000 in Florida and all the hanging chads and the older people with the hand marking devices. So we have that debate. Do we want to go ballot market devices, or do we go hand marked? And that's a debate we can have down the road, or sometime soon as well. But once again, I don't think it's the big elephant in the room. In fact, a lot of people want to go to hand counting. And when I talked to Mark Fincham, Representative Fincham, he was down for it. He was like, yeah, look at the cost analysis. We can get rid of these Dominion contracts
With
and these
lots of eyes
tabulation
on the whole
machines,
thing.
and we can just count them ourselves, hand counted, and that's going to save us a lot of money and be accurate. But I don't believe that machines cheat. I believe people manipulating machines cheat. So for me, I would like an open source blockchain system that tabulates the count, and then a hand counted audit 100% right after in the same place it's casted, it's counted. That's what I would like. But once again, that's all up for discussion. We can talk about how we can obtain these things. And me personally, if it's a choice between having proprietary software from a zombie corporation that's a zombie corporation of another zombie corporation, and we don't even know who owns the goddamn thing, I'd rather just ditch the whole black box voting and do a hand count right there, if that's the other choice. So yes.
John even went so far to talk with a company, and they were willing to build this to spec for about 50 grand. And he said, it doesn't matter. Any of those same voting machine companies that we have now could build this as long as it's built to these specs. But
Yeah.
I mean, you could sell it on its saving money too. I mean, they don't, ES&S and Dominion don't need the billions of dollars they get.
But here's the thing too, Kelley. There's a lot of, and more Dominion than ES&S. ES&S has been so much trouble so many times for bullshit actions and everything, greasing the wheel of an official to get the contract or this and that. Dominion actually, out of all the companies, better than Smartmatic, better than ES&S, better than the Hearts program, they actually have auditing software built into their machines. It's the county representatives who choose not to use those features to check. I have a friend who works at Dominion, and he's like, Pasta, your counties never use our auditing features that are there. I still am against it because I don't want any proprietary software and I want open source. But even still, this is more about the representatives and the establishment gaming the system. They're not even using all the features they have, but they'll use the feature of fractional voting to friggin' cheat if they want. And that's a serious problem.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you guys are on this story and have stayed on it.
Yeah. Well, we're not leaving this story. We'll probably be back in Arizona, my guess, in a couple weeks. They have not a hard out, but on May 14th for a week, they have the graduations in that area that are going to use the Veterans Memorial Coliseum. So they were hoping to finish before that, but they know they can't at the pace they're working. So what they're going to do, I think, is take all the stuff, secure it in one of the rooms in the back there, put cameras on it, let the graduations finish up, and then come back to that same spot and start counting again. And that's what I think is going to happen. You can't quote me on that. They haven't worked out the logistics. And of course, the Secretary of State's office is trying to, kind of muddy the waters and twist everything. And she's the one to also help contacting the DOJ saying, come in and stop this stuff. But they better be careful what they do right now at this point. Because it could start an uprising if they do things in a very, very bad way and they try to stop this audit. They ain't going to need to let this audit go through. Otherwise, it could be very, very harmful for them and dangerous. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? Because the people, they're not going to take this shit. They're mad and they want this audit and they deserve this audit. We all deserve these audits. And it's a shame to see the progressives turning their head on this, because even Garland Favorito said from Georgia, he said, man, it was all about progressives doing these audits and progressives in election integrity. There was a couple Republican groups, but he worked with people like Cynthia McKinney, for crying out loud, for years and stuff. And now this election comes and a lot of progressives are turning the blind eye because they have TDS. Come on. This was our chance here. We needed these people together because this is why they don't get their grassroots candidates in, these Democrats, these progressives, because they don't understand elections. We've been calling out these bullshit elections for so long. The 2020 primary here was gross, and they turned a blind eye on it.
There's another story in Detroit that I want to follow up on. I haven't had the time, but I mentioned it briefly when we talked, I think last time, that there were some reports about dead voters. And, that's one of those things that I always dismissed. We'd hear this voter fraud. And no, I said it all the time. It's almost non-existent. I don't really know that anymore. because I tried it myself. I went online and you could put in this guy's birth date, 1902 or something, 1901. Joanne saw me do it. I did a Zoom share screen. And sure enough, this man who was whatever, 120 or something, received a ballot. And it wasn't just him. It turns out there were hundreds, if not thousand more or something. So I don't know if anyone has followed up.
No. That's one of the things they're looking for. And there's also some complications to that too, as well. For instance, if somebody was in the registration book for over 20 years, and I think like Georgia, they would have to remake his registration to remake his ballot, and they would put the year 1900 in there, and that was just the code for that. So there are complications to that. But yes, what I like to say all the time is, when I looked at all this whole all these hearings from the Giuliani team and the Trump people who were coming forth and saying these are the problems we have at elections, and they start talking about the ghost of Hugo Chavez past, and I tell them, shut up. Clinton Curtis was approached about the software 2 years before Chavez entered in there. So even if Chavez had something to do with this, it's not the evil socialist who's creating this system to cheat people. It's within arm's length, ladies and gentlemen. It's the people who are in our living room. The call is coming from inside the house.
Right.
So when I talk about that, and I also talk about the whole illegal immigrants voting, I'm like, come on. You have no proof of that, and that's not going to swing an election. The areas that are really going to swing elections are, one, the dead people. And they did it. They showed this in the Kennedy election against Nixon in 2 different areas. You know what I'm saying? That's because they don't remove them from the voters' rolls, and then they send them out of the ballot, and that ballot gets in somebody's hand, and that ballot can be turned in. And 2, it's the people who move. Nobody ever moves and go, hey, I'm going to call my elections official, and can you take me off the voters' roll? They don't do that. So their name stays on the rolls. We have to do something with the voter registration rolls. And the problem is we're fighting against, like I said, this whole attitude that if you remove somebody or disqualify somebody, or you make somebody inactive, somebody who hasn't participated, and it's different laws for different states, somebody hasn't participated in the last 3 elections gets removed, or if somebody, they find out he came through, whatever the case may be, he moved, he died, and they removed them, whatnot. It doesn't mean they're removing them for a racist mentality. I'm not saying it hasn't been done before. We knew what happened with the cross-reference list in Florida with George Bush versus.
Well, remember the Democrats in Brooklyn, they did a great job of purging the voter rolls when it was time.
Exactly. Yeah. They didn't mind doing it there.
Bernie,
They did it in California.
Yeah.
Yep.
What'd you say, Joe?
That was the Bernie Hillary primary for people.
Oh,
who
yeah.
don't know.
But they do it themselves. And even Greg Powell admitted on Max Kaiser's show, he goes, it's kind of funny because the same voter that they remove or they purge in the primary is the same vote they try to get back for the general. That's how fucking nefarious and sinister and insidious the Democratic establishment is. Yes, they do that. They disqualify your vote as a progressive in the primary because then the progressive candidate won't win. But then they get you back in there for the general, knowing that they can throw the TDS at you and scare you in the voting against fascism.
They threaten you that you better vote on me. Yeah.
That's how disgusting they are.
We've been through this so many times. So.
Even on what's the show? Rising. This was last April. I remember Crystal Ball, and generally I like their show and a lot of what they have to say, but I was like, my hair was on fire when I heard her say this. She said, she was talking about like, do you really want it can progressives have it on their conscience if Trump wins? And I was like, hold it right there. What is she?
She's such an obvious sheep herder.
Well, that's when it struck me. Like I think you get this impression that they're trying to be independent and objective, but then they throw something like that in there. And I thought, I was just very angry. And I must have tweeted 20 things at her saying, that's not on me. That's not on us.
That's on the Democratic Party.
Right.
We're not changing enough to really give a real opposition to that Republican Party over there. That's what it's really about, But sorry, my dog's barking. Okay.
But there are a lot of people that will fall for that, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, well, I don't want to feel responsible."
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of white guilt there too, as well, and they throw that lie out there because I mean, who could be more racist than Joe Biden? He's an old school racist who he's also a segregationist who was against federally mandated busing so people of color can go to better schools and whatnot. He wrote the crime bill. He was he wrote what became the Patriot Act. He was for every single war out there that bombs indigenous people in their homeland. I don't know what could be more racist than that, but even still, they use that against people. And you have a lot of independent media people out there. They're still trying to justify their wrong call for saying to vote for Joe Biden. The best thing that could have happened was the Democratic Party would fall on its face, because the way they operate is just not good enough nowadays for the leftists. It's bad. They fall on their face, and a real party comes out of that. A real opposition comes out of that. But no, it didn't happen. And some of these people, I'm so disgusted, and they're still trying to justify their ideology of voting for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. They've now given the keys back to the establishment, and it's getting worse. And no matter what, I mean, I'm sorry, Joe Biden is worse than Donald Trump. And I can debate that all day up and down till Tuesday. And what are they trying to do? Oh, he's now releasing the patterns for the COVID vaccine shot now. Look at Joe. We can move him left. And he's going to release the troops in Afghanistan on 9/11. First of all, they were supposed to leave him May 1st. Second of all, he was for the surge in Afghanistan before anybody was. He got it wrong. He's the architect. Why in the hell will we believe this asshole who lied about the checks of 2000, who's been awful when it comes to foreign policy, who's been awful when he's been bought by big tech to the tune of 16 million? Why would we think for a second that this guy is more progressive than the orange man bad? He's not.
Can I also just say, too, back to the original topic, let's bring it all the way around. Instead of fear-mongering about these audits, let's not forget that this establishment is the same establishment that constantly brings up the threat to our elections, the lack of trust, of people's trust, and how this is such a danger to the country, more of a danger than anything else, perhaps. In fact, they're willing to drive us into a war, perhaps a world war, on the pretense that someone meddled with our. So the best thing you could do is more transparency, more audits, right? Why are you saying that it's a dangerous audit? Why are you saying that it's ludicrous and all these things? It makes you look really goddamn guilty, is what it looks like. And
it's a shame, though, that the progressives are cheering that shit on, though, Joe.
Oh, God.
They really are. They're sitting there and supporting that stuff, and it's terrible. I mean, the CIA has done a great job with the American people and the media for years. Operation Mockingbird. The CIA used to just have plants in media. Now they are the media, and it's a shame.
All right. So tell everybody how to find all your work. Of course, I'm going to link all that stuff too, but if you would just plug the show and anything else that you would like.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you can find the Convo Couch. We have a Twitter. We're on YouTube, but more importantly, we're on with our friends over here on Rockfin. That's ROKFIN. You can sign up for free, and if you got a few extra bucks to endorse us for $9.99 a month, you don't just get our premium content, but you get everybody's premium content across the board. And it's important because channels like Joanne and Kelley's and our channels are going to get censored. They're going to get demonetized because the mainstream media is run by the tech companies, and the tech companies have now merged with the government. And that's what real fascism is. So to fight back, you got to join the Rockfin Revolution is what I'm calling it. It's a platform where we don't get demonetized, we don't get censored. And as you know, we've started the Fuck Censorship movement. You can go to fuckcensorship.net to see what we're all about. We've had already two rallies. Joe joined us in the street in Washington, D.C. in the first one, when we marched from CNN to the Google building to the Fox building and all around with the megaphones. We had about 60 people in the street. We combined with the Julian Assange people to tell everybody they can go fuck them censorship. We're not going to take it laying down anymore. So go to Rockfin if you can. Sign up over there for free. Endorse it if you can. We always have a PayPal. We have a Patreon. Anything you can afford to give. It really helps us out, and we get our butts in the streets and do what we got to do. As you know, we just came back from Phoenix, Arizona. We spent 3 days there. Each one of us was able to spend a couple hours during the audit, viewing the audit, seeing the audit, the videos we played. That's Ken Bennett to interview these people, to get the real stories out there. We went and interviewed Mark Fincham. I'm going to be interviewing Sonny Borelli. We were on with some Republicans on a couple channels too as well, because they believe, and so do we, when the practical right gets together with the practical left, even though we might disagree with stuff, we'll be practical, and the things we agree on, we can fix those things and move forward as a nation. As long as we get rid of these assholes that are in charge, then we can get some real change for we the people.
Yeah, that common ground. I'm all about that common ground.
I just have one last question for you then.
Sure.
Real quick. You guys are getting a hell of a lot of pushback, though, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
I hear it. I've seen some of it on Twitter that you guys have dealt with. I haven't jumped into everything
Yep.
because you know how that goes. You're at it for 3 days. But any of that effort to find that common ground of that, let's just say 60% of stuff that we might agree with, with the quote unquote other side. When you start talking to those other people and actually reaching across the aisle, people like attack you. They just come after you.
Mhm.
So is that ramping? Are you noticing that just is
Of course.
worse? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's common right now. There's a whole group of leftists out there, progressives, who are just built, their whole ideology is built on finger wagging and virtue signaling.
Mhm.
And anything that you agree with Republicans is no good. You can never agree with Republicans on anything. Otherwise, you're awful, you're bad, you're a Nazi collaborator and stuff like that. And really, to tell you the truth, some of those people are paid, but some of those really do that because that's how they honestly feel. And that's how they've been raised, and their ideology and their mentality is there. It really is the real privilege that they can sit there and say, you can't talk to people who disagree with you because you can't find solutions for the people who matter most and help them out because they're bad, they're Nazis, and screw them. These are the same people, not mention any names, the Humanist Report, Mike Figueredo, who cheer on censorship, right? And now they're against the audit and they're against everything we're doing. He's never reached out to try to talk me. He's doxed me and put my parlor up there. When I have my parlor that says I'm a leftist libertarian looking to reach out and talk to people different than me. There's people out there all the time who still call this a conspiracy theory. It's a shame, but that's the way they are. That's who they are. And they're showing their real colors. You know what I'm saying? They can go into their own little quarter. They can virtue signal all they want. We're going to talk to people who think differently than us. Hey, listen, Katie Hobbs, the Secretary of State, this is how awful it is. She says that anybody who supports Trump is a Nazi or a Nazi sympathizer. That's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. But that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take a small group of Republicans and paint them as the majority of Republicans. And that's just simply how it's not. We went out to Phoenix, Arizona over here. We were on shows. We interviewed Republicans. There's things we disagree with it. When they mention China, we laugh about it. We joke about it and stuff. When they mention socialism being so bad, we laugh about it. We joke about it. But then we push back and we say our ways. But the thing is, you can't just point the finger at them and say you're awful. Because if you do that, then you just have people yelling at each other, screaming at each other, while the elites run off with everything. It's divide and conquer.
Yeah.
It's the oldest trick in the book, and it happens to work. So you know what? Those people, they just expose themselves, just like the fake election integrity activists who have TDS, they expose themselves to as well. So be it. We'll just work our way around it.
Well, all of those independent media that are going that route are going to go that route, up to TYT to Bill Maher show. I mean, we've seen it. It's over and over again, rinse and repeat. So hold your ground.
Yeah.
You guys are doing a great job. So,
well, thank you. And it gets tough sometimes because there is no limit to what they'll do, right? You know, they smear. They've tried to take away Fiorella's ethnicity, try to take away that she's an immigrant from Peru, you know what I'm saying, to just discredit her. They've smeared her, with her family. They've doxed me. They've spread lies about me. They do these things all the time, and it really, really hurts in a way, but you just got to ignore it, put your head down and keep working because there's no limit to what they'll do. And really, to tell you the truth, their tactic is always the same. If you don't have the merit to debate on the actual subject of what's going on, just attack the messenger and try to discredit him. And it's disgusting. It's a part of cancel culture that is just running rampant within our society. And it does suck, but we just got to work our way around it.
All right, then.
You guys are tough enough.
Thanks.
Well,
so
we have
much,
your
everybody.
support, Kelley and Joe. You keep us going. We love you. We got to get together soon. I think we should come to New Hampshire. We should do something in New Hampshire. Let's get the band back together and go have fun.
Road
That
trip.
would be awesome. I haven't. Yeah, the road trips have just stopped the last year and a half.
Well, they're picking back up. We just went on one. Let's keep it going.
All right, then. Good night, everybody. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Great to see you. And
Love you guys.
Thank you for listening. A special thanks to Craig Jardula. Follow him on Twitter at YoPasta and The Convo Couch. Find their show on YouTube, on Rockfin, and on other platforms. This podcast is independent media. Listener support's really important. Rockfin.com/AroundTheEmpire, Patreon.com/AroundTheEmpire, or PayPal.me/AroundTheEmpirePod. Find the podcast on any mobile podcast app, on the website AroundTheEmpire.com, on Rockfin, Patreon, YouTube, and new platforms still coming. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow on Twitter @AroundTheEmpire, and we'll see you next time. Take good care, everybody.